this out of the way.
Just a bit cold. I'll be with you in a second.
Yeah, don't get chilled. Okay. Just sitting comfortably then, and our usual starting. It's a bit twisted today. Rubbing your hands together. Take your time with this opening. Give yourself plenty of time to just enjoy the individual movements, tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. And your heart. On the other side. Upper part of your chest. And your belly. And then finally, your legs. Sit back, feet extended, weight dropping back into your chair. Remind yourself of this feeling of letting go into the chair. Quite difficult to do. You may notice just sort of like sitting reading or watching the television or something like that. You can find yourself sitting in a comfortable chair, and you're sort of, you've got your hands tight, or your shoulders are stiff, or your toes are kind of clenched in. We don't need that tension. We don't need that tightness in the body, but for various reasons, it's often there. And that can be quite frustrating. Tense again. But actually, the truth is that that was always happening, but you're beginning to notice it. So that's a step forward, of course. So really sinking into the chair, feeling the effect on your body as you do. It's in your breathing, circulation. Now, bring your feet in. Get them in position. Bring your weight slightly forwards. So if I go forwards like this, and then just let my hips drop back, I naturally come to this upright position. And there's something very special about this, I think. This sense of just opening up, because it doesn't happen all the time, and it's difficult to keep. But for a few moments, you may just experience this kind of almost effortless quality to being upright. Effortless is the wrong word. It's a different type of effort. You are putting a lot of effort in, but in a different way. So it's nice just to feel you can sit or to stand without that straining. You might need to shuffle around a bit to adjust the weight. After a while, it will become a bit more difficult because muscles aren't used to necessarily being in this position. Well, when you stiffen up, see if you can find a way to let them soften. If you can't, just move. Don't think I'm going to hold this position forever or anything like that. And somebody was just saying it can be quite tiring in one position. And then slowly turning your head. So that nice open posture allows for a freedom of movement. If we're not tensing, if we're not straining, say in our shoulders, then our head will turn much more easily. And I've said before about moving in the space that's available to you, rather than thinking you've got to move further. You have an idea, an intent, that gradually that space will expand. It's almost like it gets eroded away, so you get more space to move in. And that's just a natural process, I think, in Tai Chi. So you don't need to sort of like strain to get more movement. You just need to keep practicing, basically. And then the shoulders. And then going forwards. Just moving out to the sides. And winding around. And then back the other way. Easing forwards. So we use the hips in the way that I described before, also our legs. And I've always maintained that this is in many ways more subtle than in standing, the weight transfer and the turning in the center when we come to that. So you have to really focus quite deeply to really appreciate the change between feeling the pressure in your hips to the feeling the pressure in your legs and then back again. One thing you can do to help you with that is as you go forwards, just raise your heels. So if I do this from the side, I'm going to fall off the chair. If you watch as I go forward, I raise my heel, and that means it's quite strong in the ball of my foot. Now the problem there is you'll end up tensing up in your calf muscle. So don't do it like this all the time until you really, you could do it with all the movements that we do with the weight transfer. But what you don't want to do is to create tension. So it would take a while for you to be able to do it all the time. But if you do it just a little bit, it'll give you a much clearer impression of what it feels like to change the weight, what it feels like with the weight in your legs. Then you try doing it with your heels down, and that feeling is still there, but it's much smaller. So you kind of zoom in, if you like, on the feeling. And turn a little bit. And of course, when we come to do movement standing, then you'll already have an idea of what you're looking for. Here, for instance, when I go forward, I've got more of my weight in this leg than in this leg. And again, it's a very subtle distinction to make. And again, if you want to, you can raise your heels, but this distinguishing between what we would call full and empty in the legs is a really kind of important element of Tai Chi. So it's really training your awareness much more deeply. Turn the other way. Same thing with the turning in your center. And then going around. And back the other way. Nice smooth feeling of movement in your back and your spine. Come back to the center. Sink down. Raise your heel and push out. You'll feel a little bit of movement in your back as you do this. No action inside, in our bodies is ever just totally isolated unless we try really hard to do that. So notice what happens in your hips, your back, as you take the step. Just try and avoid straining in your shoulders, or anywhere really, but particularly your shoulders. And then on the other side. Good. And so now going back. I was watching some film on YouTube of birds coming into land, particularly the big birds. What they seem to do as they're coming into land is they sort of fold their wings in as a braking thing. And it reminded me of this. You can really see there was one of an owl coming to land on somebody's hand. And you could really see the chest sort of working. So I think I might call this exercise bird folds its wings. Because it kind of reminded me of this. You've got to call it something, haven't you? It's worth having a look on YouTube. Just search for birds coming into land, and there's quite a lot out there. Some really nice film out there. And it looks almost like they're kind of folding the wings in just a little bit. And it's a great exercise because it really makes clear or clearer this connected quality between the transfer of your weight, the opening and closing in your chest and your upper back, and the expression of those movements in the movement of your arms and your hands, and how they just blend into basically into one movement. Because of course it should be one thing. So next time we'll change to fisherman cast net. Those elements are still there. Not so obvious, but if you focus on the transfer of your weight and what's happening in your upper body, just let your arms follow. You know this exercise well. You've done it loads of times. It's not complicated. And you'll start to realize that you were probably overdoing the movements with your arms. to start off with, we all do this. We kind of swing the arms out, and you realise it's not really necessary. It's a much more subtle movement than that. And one of the problems is, I think, that if we overdo the arms, which, as I say, we all do to begin with, we actually swamp, we overrule almost the subtler movement. So we never get to realise that they're going on. It always reminds me of being in a crowded room and trying to hear what somebody's saying. They've got a very quiet voice. And somebody behind you is talking with a very loud, booming voice. And then coming over. And then pigeon spreads its wings. Drawing your arms out, of course, the opposite of folding in, I mentioned earlier. This is where we really benefit from being aware of what's going on between the shoulder blades. Here it's as though the shoulder blades are pulled apart, and then they just contract back in. So the muscles in your upper back are extending out and then pulling in like big elastic bands. So now pushing a wave, and here's just the elbows that go out a little bit. So we get some sense of how we build this stronger quality in the body. It's not our arms. Well, obviously, the arms express the movement, but all that energy, all that strength in the big muscles of your chest and your upper back, right down into your lower back and so on and so forth, are building up like a wave, pushing in behind your arms. That's one of the ways that we understand this notion of inner strength. And it's not just physical, it's also the quality of the movement itself, the quality of the energy changes. Now hands fisted. I sometimes describe that sort of qualitative change in the movement, in the energy, as being like the difference between feeling a light breeze on your skin, just brushing over the skin, and water flowing over your skin. Both are quite soft. And yet the water feels stronger, more connected. And this isn't just about feeling strong in the way that we normally think of it. It's something that comes from the martial side of it. But when we think of it on an energetic level, the strength of the energy, the strength of the flow has a dramatic impact on our well-being. This time we'll go back to pigeon spread its wings, and as always when we do this, just aware of the subtle changes in our body between one movement and another. Each movement has a lot of similarities with each other movement, but also these very subtle differences. And just training your awareness to spot those. Now this time, moving on. So when we do this exercise, we really do experience that opening in the chest. It's like we're really building up for a strong push. If you were going to push something, you wouldn't want to bring your hands all the way back down that way, by the way, but that's not neither here nor there. One more time. So now we want to make all these different factors work and observe how they work for vertical movement. Again, a great deal more subtle, but still feeling the connection down into your feet. So again, I'm not suggesting you do this a lot, but if I turn around, I could, for instance, here, again, you see I'm raising my heel, I'll push the ball of my foot down, and I get that sense of a lift. I can really feel it through that side of the body. We do that. So again, you might want to sort of try that a little bit. Do it with both feet for this exercise, although when we come to dragon plucks the stars from the sky, you might well want to just alternate it. But yeah, it'll be quite tiring to do that. So before you end up sort of stiffening up or tightening up in your calf muscle, stop doing it, because you know, in a way it's kind of too much. One more time. And then hands out to your sides. Feel that opening and closing in the chest. And then heart in the clouds. One more time. So then, put your hand down and just for a few rounds, just push down through the ball of the foot and feel the push up through that side of your body. Lower the heel and down. And then switch the other side and start by pushing your foot into the ground. So that side of your body expanding, and then as you lower the heel, contract. When you've done it a few times, keep your heel down. But see if you can still feel that movement going on to one side of your body. Let's do one more on each side. And then bring your hands in. Now this time, at the turn, notice how you're using the legs to make the turn. Are you using one leg more than another to initiate the movement? Because your body knows how to move. Always remember in Tai Chi, we're taking the natural movements of our body, the natural actions of our body, and just working to cultivate those. Now, one foot out, scooping the sea and looking at the sky. So this is one of the more demanding movements physically, I think. And we find that the awareness that we've built in to the practice really starts to pay dividends, that we can really feel what's going on in our body, find the right way to do these movements. All the movements will follow the path of least resistance. So if you're kind of like getting to a point where you're forcing yourself to do the movement, you've gone wrong somewhere. You need to sort of go back a little bit and find where you started to stray. See if you can find a more open pathway for the move. And then grasping the tiger's ears. It's like if you're chopping a piece of wood. If you chop with the grain, you get a much better result than if you chop against the grain. Switch sides. Good. And then grasping the tiger's ears. Good. And then take a couple of slow, gentle breaths. So that idea of following the path of least resistance points us at something I think is very important about understanding Tai Chi and Qigong. We can't approach these arts in the way that we would approach what we might call more familiar exercises. This is not a criticism of other forms of exercise, by the way. A lot of them are very valuable, well worth doing. But if we just see Tai Chi as a kind of slow exercise, like kind of slow down aerobics or something like that, then we're missing something very valuable. Tai Chi looks very differently. The mindset for Tai Chi is actually very different. The strength that we build up and the strength that we use in practicing Tai Chi is actually very different. We use the body, in a sense, we use the mind very differently in Tai Chi to most other forms of exercise. We're concerned with the whole body. We're concerned not with straining and so on and so forth. We're concerned with finding that path of least resistance. I was a few months ago when I was teaching somebody privately on Parker's piece, and they'd been doing one of the forms with me, and I had to tell them not to move so far, because although they weren't falling over or anything like that, they were moving too far for the movement that I was trying to teach them to be done. They were going into the wrong position. They were throwing the posture in into the wrong place. And she said to me, I was just trying to get a bit of a workout. So fine, by all means, have a bit of a workout, but don't do that when you're learning Tai Chi, because it will put you on the wrong path. It's a different approach that we actually need to take. It's a complementary approach. I'm not saying you can't do, you have to do one or the other. But when you come to a Tai Chi or Qigong class, be aware that you are approaching things slightly differently in lots of very different subtle ways. Okay, now let your hands drop down. So forwards and backwards again, almost as though you're going to do fisherman cast a net, but you're going to move into this leg as though you're going to push something with your shoulder, and just let that swing your arms out. Notice how high my hands aren't going. They're being pushed up and out by the movement within the body, and that's about as far as they're going to go. If I go from here to here, I'm straining in my shoulders. And remember, that tightening will block the movement that we're trying to develop. But you may find it, and I'm starting to realize it's happening now, not because I was intending it, just because it's quite a natural outcome, just because my body's getting into the swing of it, my arms are moving higher, but I'm still not tightening my shoulders. And I'm not competing. I'm not trying to show off by moving my arms more. I'm not thinking, well, yesterday I could do it this way. I'm thinking, how far does the movement move my arms? So wind blows the willows. Now, because we're going into one side, the leg that we're moving towards is the full leg. Remember earlier, I was talking about making that distinction between full and empty. So now, as you do this, I'm going into this side, my right side. I can raise the heel of my left side without too much effort. If the weight was in that leg, I'd have to really push hard, but it's not a hard move. But it does give a little bit of extra lift through my body. Don't let your hands come above shoulder height, no matter what, for this exercise. Don't turn your head. What's what I'm doing? Some of you are doing this. You're going there and you're doing that. Turn your body, let your head follow. I'll show you why when we do the standing. Now this time, if you can, raise the leg, dragonfly skims the water. Plant the foot down, get the foot in the good position, turn the other way. Be careful, it's strong in the hip and your back. If it's too strong, then don't do it. You don't get anywhere by injuring yourself. And we'll finish there with this one. Still going forwards and backwards, but this time with the turn in the center of your body. Go back and then come back to here and then go the other way. Hands in front of you. And gradually you'll find that transfer of your weight, the turn, quite small movements. So this is stirring the beans. My arms just extend out a little bit. They're about, well, an inch or two above my hips, no higher than that, so below my ribs. When I say these things, check. The worst that can happen is you find out you're doing it correctly. And whether you were or whether you weren't, the very act of thinking, oh, hold on, are my hands below my ribs, is it reconnects you with your body. You come back to the center and the archer. Very important you don't tighten your shoulders so you don't push out too far, especially if you're going to turn your head while you do this. So that opens across the chest. Very subtle. So your rib cage and your lungs are being very gently massaged. Do one more on each side. Good. Now, once again, rubbing your hands together. Tapping over your face. Over your head and neck. Down to one shoulder. Arm. The other side. Part of your chest again. Belly. Your legs. And then stand carefully. So I said earlier, when you turn, don't turn your head first. I'm sure we've all had the experience of, you know, something's behind you. Someone says, can you pass me that book? And you kind of do that, and suddenly there's a click in your neck, and you've got this strained muscle. So that's one reason not to turn your head too far, because actually you can't turn too far without strain. Another problem with that is that if you turn your head too far, you put pressure on the side of your neck. Not a great idea because of the arteries in there. You can cut off the blood supply to the brain. Also, if your head moves first, it's the wrong way round, and it can destabilize you. If you look at figures published by the NHS, I'm a bit out of date, but it always used to be the case that one of the primary factors for causing us to fall was when we turning too quickly. And what most people do when they turn, especially if they turn quickly, is the head turns. And that pulls me over. It's a bit of a cliche in self-defense that if you can move somebody's head, the whole body will follow. Yeah? So if somebody pushes against my chin here, it's very hard to resist because there's no muscle there to speak of. I do this and look, I'm on. So actually, if your habit is to turn your head first, and some of you were doing this when we did pushing in 4 directions, you were doing this, jerking your head around, you're going to damage your neck, for one thing. But another thing is, if that's what you do habitually, you're more likely to fall over at some point. So when we turn, if I just exaggerate this, I turn here, and then I turn my head a little bit. So it kind of follows a spiraling pathway when we do that. So think about that and think about what you're doing, particularly in the chair. So now feet parallel, sinking down and pushing up. And one more. And then change into the wild goose. And Art in the Clouds. And then sink down, push up and turn. Remember, if you turn your head, you might not. But here, I actually haven't turned my head at all. I can just see my hand out of the corner of my eye. Now, I might, in some circumstances, turn a little bit further, but only at the end of the movement. Better not to turn it at all, really. You don't really need to with this exercise, though some you do. One more time. 1 foot forwards. Transferring your weight. And then raising your toes and your heel. Sinking down. Be aware of that distinction between full and empty. Know which leg you're in. Know where the weight is in your feet. Know how much weight is sort of like hanging behind. And when you're ready, just stepping in. Good. Okay, stance. So you see, here I'm facing forwards and I'm looking forwards. So there's the line of my shoulder, and that's where I'm looking. I'm not suggesting that you don't let your eyes scan around. And with some movements, when we start to turn, you might turn your head a little bit, but you can also see out the corner of your eye. So sometimes in some movements where we might turn the head a little bit, it's only just to catch what's behind us, not necessarily to look hard in one particular direction. And then raise your toes and your heel. And then stepping in. And then depending on which direction you've got the space in, just take a few steps forwards or backwards. Going the other way. Notice that each step I take, my foot comes in and then out. Keep the width of the step. Shake out. So wind blows the willows and dragonfly skims the water are actually very difficult movements. The combination of the weight transfer, of the extension of our arms, the turning, and if you choose to do it, the stepping, are all things that have actions that are often defined as being crucial in remaining stable. So for instance, in falls rehabilitation, if somebody's fallen a lot and they do a rehabilitation program, weight transfer is really emphasized. Get your weight transfer right. Be careful when you turn. Be careful how far you extend your arms. So it's almost as though wind blows the willows and dragonfly skims the water are setting us up to fail, because we're being asked to do all of these things that may throw us off balance. But remember, the path of least resistance. Find the way that works for you without the strain. Move in a different way and view the movement in your mind in a different way. This is not slowed down aerobics. And to get the best out of both Tai Chi and aerobics, I think it's important to understand that. So have your right foot forwards, sink back, and turn to your right to swing your arms out. Make sure you get the weight transfer going forward, sink in, turn just as far as you're comfortable turning. Remember your range of movement, how far you're moving, will just naturally increase over a period of time with practice. If you practice correctly, if you're straining, then that won't happen. The wind blows the willows. And you could just stay with this one. It's a lovely exercise in its own right. I really fell in love with this exercise when I first did it. If you wish, you can bring the empty foot in, plant the foot down, transfer the weight once the foot is on the ground, not before. Good. Change sides, start in your back foot, turn your body towards the front foot, and then go forward and just let your body gently swing around. The image of the willow tree is a lovely one. Deep roots, very supple wood, and with these lovely overhanging branches, particularly in the summer, that sort of feel of the willow tree, all really very much part of the exercise. And if you wish, stepping in, making sure you plant the foot down, transfer the weight, distinguishing between full and empties. You can only take the step when the leg that you're sitting on has that full quality. And then again, depending on where you've got the space, you can either go forwards or backwards. If you feel up to it, bring the foot in, and then just either step back or go forwards. Take your time. I'm just going to do one more going forwards. You can put your foot down there. Now, go back. Well, I'm going back. You're turning towards the front leg. And that's the leg that you step with. Dragonfly skims the water. And bring your feet down. Good. Okay, back to your chair. So remember, there's a little film of Wind Blows the Willows and the Dragonfly up on YouTube. They actually come from different places, in a sense, different backgrounds to the exercise, but I think they blend really well together. I think the image goes really well together as well. It always conjures up memories and images for me of being by the river, the willow tree in summer with the dragonflies skimming around. It's quite a nice image. Okay, let your hips settle again then, and now embrace tiger, return to bed. One more time. And rest. Lovely. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Mike.
You.
Thank you.
So thanks a lot. So take care, everybody.
Thank you.
See you all very soon. So
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
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 Bye.